Shiting from Razor TV. Back to the topic of social media, I'd like to direct the question to Dr. Ng. What are your thoughts about the recent online brandishing of the youngest new candidate, Ms. Tin? And for the rest of the candidates, how would you handle a situation when the use of social media for political activities or information has encroached into your private life?
Well, I'll answer the question. We can move on because it's with 5 more minutes. I think the larger issue is for the young of Singapore to decide how they want to use the platform. I mean, it's a very powerful tool to network, to put on life on display, for discourse, for enlightenment, for all the contrasts to diminish the whole exercise. And this is something that all our children use it. They use it ubiquitously and pervasively. It's something that's part of their life, and it's something for them to shape. So it's in Kuwait, we say it's still evolving. Its final form must be decided by that generation. I hope that they are enlightened enough to use it for good. Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of Internet, I think, once cautioned that once you immortalize your past. He's actually advised against it. The larger issue is how do you use this tool? I think personalities aside, anyone can be at the short end of the stick. But I think the larger issue is for the young Singaporeans to decide how am I going to use this tool that can be used for good or otherwise. Other questions?
Dr. I'm Kavita from MediaCorp News. There seems to be a sentiment on the ground that over the past GEs, the PAP's Indian candidates, they can't seem to speak Tamil, which is the official language, or they are increasingly monolingual. And there seems to be a concern that this might lead to a disconnect with the Indian community. How would you actually address these concerns? And with respect to that, and I would also like to ask Mr. Vikram whether he is bilingual or monolingual. Thank you.
I would say that we bring in different perspectives, and ideally, obviously, all of us want the ideal. Somebody who is trilingual, who can speak with equal panache in all 3 languages, if not more, who is bright, who is who is good looking in the press, but life is not perfect. But the combined slate of candidates, the question is, are needs and views represented? And I would say yes. I mean, if you look at our current cabinet or current MPs, we have those who come from different communities, and not only from just the Indian, we're talking about it was Chinese as well as Malay communities. As to whether Vikram speaks both languages, I'll let him answer that question.
எனக்கு தமிழ் பேசலாம், அவ்வளவு நன்றாக பேச முடியாது, ஆனால் தமிழ் புரியும். I said I speak Tamil, not very well, but I understand it well enough.
I understand he speaks both Tamil and Malayali. Any other questions?
Dr. I'm Eugene from the New Paper. We recently published a survey that we did of 1,000 people aged 21 to 35 on politics and youth in Singapore. And one of the big findings we found was that we asked them if voting was not compulsory, would you vote? And 2 in 5 said that they wouldn't vote if it wasn't compulsory. If they were on holiday or they had plans to do something else, they would not vote. And 1 in 4 said that they felt very alienated, politically alienated, as in they want to do something, but they feel that they can't or their views are not being heard. So I would just like to get your thoughts on the feelings of this group of young Singaporeans. And based on your interactions with them, what's your biggest challenge in trying to reach out to get the youth to get engaged? Second question for Vikram. This group of people are actually within your age group and your peers, and I was wondering whether you get the same sense from your peers, and how can the government do better to reach out to those who feel that they are alienated or they don't care about politics? Thanks.
Well, the world's freest democracy, the US, in a presidential vote, less than half voted. So that's the comparison. And I think that's why we should make voting compulsory and should keep it compulsory. As to the young, I don't know the specifics of your survey, but all of us were young once and must have felt that way. So I wouldn't overread into it. We change, as Vikram says, when you have a career, families, mouths to feed, and when you settle down, life changes. So we shouldn't overreact. I remember how I was young, and I doubt if it was imaginable that I would be here today.
Yeah, I mean, I studied in the UK as well, and I think in Singapore, one of the things I've noticed is political apathy. I think is a luxury you can have when things are actually going okay. Either that or you've just given up hope completely. But I think in Singapore's case, it is probably the latter. I mean, the UK is just like the US as well. I think 1 in 2 people don't vote, so your biggest challenge is just getting people to the voting booth. But I think it's important that even if you don't have loud political opinions, your voice should be heard. And I think that's why mandatory voting is a good thing. Because otherwise, what you find is the loudest people will mobilize their best friends. They'll all go to the polling booth, and they may have a disproportionate influence on policies. You may get special interest groups having a strong effect because they mobilize voters to go to the polling booth. So I think by keeping voting compulsory, you reduce the power of like special interest groups and people who do no more than just mobilize people to get to the polling booth, because you even get people who may not have strong political views but who like the way things are going or are comfortable to cast their vote. So I think it is necessary to make the quieter voices get heard. And I think political apathy is not something I would get too worried about. I think it's a luxury, and if things are going seriously wrong, I think people will get politically involved. But if they can not be involved and things go well, all the better.
Thank you. Maybe just two more questions.
The question is for Dr. This is Chuching from South. You mentioned in the opening remarks that one of the ways of assessing the potential candidate is by getting feedbacks from the activists and MPs on the ground. What about those candidates which we term the heavyweight candidates who are parachuted in? How do you assess their suitability to become an MPs?
The feedback from the MPs and the branch activists and the MP, the feedback was more, can this person connect with people? Because that's an essential quality in being able to explain policy or have empathy with the problem or try to help people understand why they got into this predicament and what the solutions are. So that was more what it is. As to other candidates who could not work the ground because they may be from the civil service or otherwise, we would get feedback about that quality from other more equally reliable sources or who have known them. So that assessment was essential, but obviously some we would have gotten it, and some are known to us. I mean, we've seen them, and we've assessed firsthand whether they can or not. I think one more question, perhaps. Anyone? If not, thank you. Let me just make some concluding remarks. The three candidates, this is our fourth session. We are somewhere about half. And the three candidates here today there are certain aspects which are similar. They're all professionals with private sector experience who got involved in grassroots activities, either the unions or the branch on their own accord. They also represent those in their early 30s and 40s, the 30s and early 40s, born post-independence. By the time we have completely introduced the candidates, you will see that we have a diverse slate of candidates from the generation that must take Singapore forward beyond 2020. Thank you very much.